Hello and welcome to a really exciting webinar, Change Management and a Research Collaboration. So this is the first of two webinars and we are looking at the emotional reaction to change. Our second webinar will provide you with the tools and the guidance to help you navigate through change and the emotional reaction. So I'm Paula Carter of Initio Success.
I'm Natalie Willits of Natalie Willits Research and Writing Services.
Brilliant. And as I say, this has been a really exciting collaboration, hasn't it, Natalie?
Yeah, it's been a few months in the making.
It absolutely has, and it's great because what we will do is, whilst I a change practitioner, and I help businesses to navigate through change. What I wanted Natalie to do for this particular area is to look at more of the emotional side of change, a little deeper from a neurodiverse perspective. And Natalie, I'm really looking forward to hearing a lot about the research that you've undertaken and what you're going to
Thank
share with
you.
us today. So to start with, I'm going to go through the theory and also a little bit of the emotion of change. And then I'll be handing over to you, Natalie, won't I, then, so that you can share all that exciting work that you've been undertaking and the insight that you've found.
Brilliant.
So change, often we have an assumption that it is just something that actually changes from A to B, but it can also be something that alters the way A is working or modifying A, or what it could be doing is taking some of the A and partner it with something of B. So change is just the way to look at it is if the act or the process is completely different to what it was yesterday, to what it is today, then that constitutes a change. Now, crikey, I mean, Natalie, we've undertaken a lot of change, and without me sharing my age, I've probably seen a lot of change over the last 25, 30 years. Um, I think the breakthrough, I think, for a lot of the fundamental change has been, I think, the internet.
Hmm.
And I mean, here's one for you, Natalie. I can remember hardwired telephones, not like the black one, but I can remember hardwired telephones. And now you think of the freedom that you have with a cordless phone, and a mobile walking around. But is it freedom?
Mm.
The fact that people can contact you at any point of the day or night, the choice is whether you answer or not or respond. But ultimately, it's just gone mad, I think, over the last 30 years. There's been a lot of change, and it's a lot for human beings to adapt to when the pace of change is so fast, and particularly if it's quite radical, isn't it?
Yes, we'll be covering some radical change in my research later.
Yes, I'm looking forward to hearing about that and you sharing it. So change, where does it come from? It could be something that's been thought of, or it could be an opportunity. I like to frame them as opportunities. So if there's been a problem or an issue, I reframe it to say, hey, we've got an opportunity here to either improve, to drive efficiencies, or make our organisation or the processes that we use more effective. But that can come from digitalisation, it could be from automation. A lot of it can actually start to generate concerns, issues, or vulnerabilities depending on how people are impacted by. But I think the thing is with change, if it's done, and I say good change management is undertaken correctly, and people are brought along on the journey, you can underpin so much growth and so much success through change. So moving from the status quo to something that is different, something that is new, not only delivers the change, but what it can do, it can unleash the mind to then think, oh, once we've done this, we've uncovered something else and we can change something else. And it can make that journey quite exciting, but equally it can impact people quite greatly, where it uncovers either a trigger or an emotion, and that we'll cover that as well. And certainly Natalie will, which is great. So the reasons for change, it could be contractual, It doesn't necessarily have to be something that is innovative, that's something that we thought of and being creative. It can be something that has to be done. So it could be a new legislation. It could be a completely new system that was being worked. So there's a difference between some of the, I guess, really the sources of what's driving a change from being something that is exciting and creative to something we have to do it and it's got to be done by this particular time and date. So sometimes, again, it can unleash a lot of different emotions there. What I also say is, with change management, and again, in inverted commas, good change management, is we don't have to change everything. It's okay not to change everything because there may actually be things and processes that work really, really well. So why would we change it for the sake of it? So what I suggest and help businesses do is to kind of look at the as is, and of what's the as is when you're looking at the to be, what's going to be, what can we take forward with the new element? So remember the analogy of the A and the B. We could be taking some of what is there in A to partner what is new with B to take it to the future state. So I'm a big believer in justifiable change. Can we qualify it? What's our ROI? What are we going to get from that investment of change? And then it helps to land that message a lot better because you're able to explain what it is we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're going to do it, and when are we going to do it. So the change curve, some of you may have heard what the change curve is. This was brought up, I think it was around late 1960s, early 70s, and it was used as for people that were dealing with and having to live through grief. It was then recognised in the late 80s, 90s that it could be adapted in business. And I'll tell you why it can be adapted into business is because when you've got the A and the B, and people are happy with the A and the status quo, to take them away from that, it is an element of grief because they're losing something that there's actually been that they're used to. So they can generally, or one can generally go into a shock. Oh my goodness, I do not want to change from this. I've always done it this way. I'm good at doing it this way. Why is it having to change? Now, what then comes naturally afterwards is as the change is being continued and people around are on that journey, that person may then start to think, do you know what, it's not happening to me. You bury in my head, I don't want to know about it. I'm just going to carry on doing what I've been doing for a while. And hopefully no one will notice. But I want to carry on doing what I believe I'm good at. If they are then dragged along out of the denial, then they can start to feel really frustrated. They can start to feel quite resentful. Why are you pulling me out of what I've always done? This is really hard for me. And if they don't feel as if they've been heard and listened to, it's quite easily they can then start to dip into a very, very low mood and start to feel really down about it and start to worry. And that in itself can be a paralysis because they find it very difficult to get out of that part of it. Some people will not go into stage 1 and stage 2 or even stage 3, which I'll go through shortly, but they go straight through to stage 4, which is the acceptance part. And then, you know what, I haven't got any problems with it. I'm a really positive person. I'm going to get there. And it goes live. And then suddenly it's like, oh, it's not what I thought it was going to be. And then what they do is they then shoot all the way back to shock because I never thought it was going to be this. They didn't tell him it was going to be this. And then you're then having to help those people, those individuals along that journey again, which can be really difficult when you're wanting to go live and have everybody there and you expect everyone to be there at that point of go live. What is a good place to start then, really, to get people together is the experiment part. Even when they're at stage 4, let them test it. Let them feel comfortable. And even if they say, I'm fine with it, I'm ready to go live with it, it's absolutely okay. Encourage them to test and experiment it. Come and dip your toe in the water. Come and try it out. See if it's what you think it's going to be. bringing the people from stage 1 and stage 2 into that stage 3, because what you want to do is when you reach a decision, you want everybody to be happy, comfortable, and understand exactly what's going to be done, so they're ready for stage 4. Sadly, there may be some discussions where people just cannot move from it, and it has to be a discussion that is handled with kindness, but end up having to part ways away from this project, or maybe the work or the role, whatever that is. But hopefully you'll be in a position to bring everybody to stage 4 and then celebrate together. What we were looking at in the next webinar is we'll go more into detail around, the effectiveness of listening and how to communicate well. And Natalie, you're going to help tremendously on this from a research perspective, because we'll be able to look at the different types of people that we would be working with. So that will be, yeah, and also different ways of celebrating, because not everybody wants to celebrate. They just want to be able to complete what needs to be done and move away quietly. So it's about accommodating everybody, isn't it, on that?
Yeah, and we'll also be answering viewers' questions in a Q&A in the second
Oh,
webinar. So if you have any questions related to change or the process of change within organizations, please get in touch. We have a Google form that you can fill out after this webinar.
brilliant, absolutely. And we can involve that in the second webinar. Yeah, perfect. So the conclusion for my part is, people are important. People-centric change is really, really important. The reason being is these are the people that are going to help you achieve success. You cannot, unless it's an incredibly small project, achieve success alone. And what a lonely place to be. And then to be able to get to that end goal and turn around and find there's nobody there with you on this journey. I always say, get those temperature checks done along the way. Make sure that people are continually on that with you. But we'll cover more again, like we said in webinar 2. But the most important part of it is let's learn together. It's a journey. Let's
Mhm.
learn together. We might not get it right along the way, but we'll learn and take that learning with us for the next ones. And most importantly, recognize, acknowledge the good bits that we do as well, because that keeps the momentum going, and helps to avoid the fatigue of change. So over to you, Natalie.
Thank you, Paula. That was a really insightful presentation into how change works. Yeah, so as Paul has mentioned, this part of our presentation is based on my research into how organizational change impacts people. Change in the workplace is inevitable, but how it is introduced, managed, and perceived can have significant consequences for your employees and the wider organization. I'll take you through my research findings, including outcomes of various various impacts and reactions to change. I'll also offer some insights into the pillars of a successful change initiative based on my research. So next slide, please. Organizational change involves disruption to roles, processes, and workflows. Both employees and organizations alike demonstrate a range of cognitive and behavioral responses to change and the change process. These cognitive and behavioral responses to change and the change process can either be positive or negative. Positive reactions to change strengthen social relationships, encourage creativity, collaboration, and result in acceptance of change. Negative reactions, on the other hand, result in resistance.
Mhm.
How employees and the wider organization respond to change depends on pre-existing cognitive factors and organizational structures. However, regardless of the intention of a proposed change, in whether it's meant to be positive or negative, the process involves increased frustration, uncertainty, fear, and emotional insecurity across all levels of the organization. Next slide, please. So in this section, I'm going to discuss my findings regarding the extent of organisational change and how it impacts people differently. So humans thrive on routine and structure. However, my research shows that fundamental structures and routines are more likely to be influenced when broad organizational changes are implemented. This is because changes to fundamental structures and routines affect greater numbers of employees across the organization. Excuse me. Such changes require individuals as well as entire teams to increase communication and collaboration to ensure that changes are fully implemented. My research found that increasing coordination and cooperation across the firm had significant impact on employee stress. Increasing linkages and communication channels between various previously less integrated parts of the organization implies broader consequences for employees at all levels. For employees, changes to multi-departmental communication and collaboration highlights the need for new levels of internal control. This could lead to both altered sources of authority and to changes or increases in the number and characteristics of the individuals with whom an employee needs to coordinate and communicate with. This adjustment to new schemes is likely to be difficult because it involves a period of overlap between old and new procedures and routines, with ample potential for confusion, frustration, and lost productivity. As a consequence, employees may feel unfairly treated, obsolete, and replaceable. These negative feelings subsequently increase the probability that employees will receive stress-related medications. Next slide, please. So rapid change requires individuals and wider teams to adapt quickly to new structures and processes. This type of organizational change incurs higher costs in time and effort on the part of affected individuals. Compared to changes introduced gradually, radical changes are also more likely to require additional costs in employee time and effort to fully implement across the organization and to help employees transition through their original routines and activities to the new. Whether broad, rapid, or a combination of the two, these types of organizational changes are more likely to incur overlaps in operations and activities, leading to confusion, stress, opportunities for disruption, and negative reactions among employees. However, there is some good news. Organizations with solid structures of support that are built on a culture of creativity, collaboration, and open communication are better equipped to handle and successfully adapt during periods of change, as well as address any difficulties that will impact their employees' cognitive and behavioral approaches during this often busy and stressful time. We're going to look at exactly how individuals and the wider organization respond to organizational change and the pre-existing factors that influence their responses in the next few slides. Next slide, please. There we go. My research distinguishes between micro-level and macro-level reactions. Micro-level reactions are individual, how employees personally respond in terms of behavior, cognition, and emotion. At the micro level, several factors shape how individuals respond. These include leadership style, communication abilities, personal characteristics, and openness to change. Macro level reactions are organizational, involving leaders, stakeholders, and collective responses. Leadership, communication, trust, and overall openness to change are key in encouraging positive behaviors in response to periods of organizational change. Next slide, please. So reactions to organizational change are influenced by pre-existing factors. These are the antecedents to reactions. Essentially, these are the personality traits of the individual employees and the wider organization prior to the period of change. Next slide, please. So there is a reciprocal relationship between the organization's antecedent structures or culture, the cognitive and behavioral makeup of its employees, and collectively their responses when faced with change. When organizations already have supportive and dynamic structures in these areas, they are more likely to attract employees who share their values, so strong leadership, openness to change, etc. Employees are more likely to feel supported. And during periods of change, employees are more likely to present positive cognitive and behavioral reactions towards the change. In turn, organizations with these positive structures already in place are more likely to manifest a culture that is proactive during periods of change, approach periods of change with creativity and flexibility rather than rigidity and resistance, communicate change to its leadership teams and employees, as well as incorporate the perceptions and opinions of these groups throughout the change process, and implement supportive structures or resources for employees to reduce the stress, anxiety, or other individual struggles caused by disruption to routine workflows. So an individual's or organization's perception of proposed changes incurs either positive or negative reactions, which can either drive or hinder the implementation of change. Depending on the effectiveness of the change being implemented, there are several behavioral outcomes at the individual and wider organizational levels. Next slide, please. Reactions can take the form of exit, voice, loyalty, and neglect behaviors. For example, some employees may express concerns constructively, while others may disengage or even leave the organization. At the organizational level, we see similar patterns, but on a wider scale. For example, during mergers or major restructuring, leaders' attitudes often shape whether employees view the change as threatening or as an opportunity. Organizational voice, exit, loyalty, and neglect emerges as collective responses that affect culture, performance, and even the survival of the organization. Collectively, these behaviors form the basis of the organization's social identity. We're now going to look at each behavior independently. Next slide, please. So voice behavior is considered a high-risk, costly micro-level reaction to organizational change. This is because positive voice behaviors among employees can improve creativity, performance, exploration, and exploitation of ideas. On the other hand, negative voice behaviors often affect employee social relations, resulting in employees feeling unappreciated and increasing resistance to change and employee turnover. When company culture nurtures and promotes positive voice behaviors, it reduces anxiety and fatigue during periods of change. Next slide, please. Exit behaviours are characterised by employees transferring, thinking about quitting, job searching, and sabotaging their job role during periods of change. There are two different types of exit behaviours. Vertical exit behaviour involves employees moving upwards within the same organisation, while horizontal exit behaviour involves employees leaving the organisation to work elsewhere. Organizational inertia, an organization's resistance to change, was found to increase employee turnover. Exit behavior can be viewed as either positive or negative for the organization. On the one hand, it leads to the loss of competitive edge, loss of innovation and creativity, loss of development opportunities. It impacts employee loyalty and increases desire to search for new work. On the other hand, employee turnover also provides opportunities for correcting organizational errors, task improvement. It attracts new skilled human resources and can improve performance. Next slide, please. Compared to some of the other behaviours demonstrated during periods of change, neglect behaviour is a wholly negative experience. It is characterised by reduced effort, quality of work output, increased absenteeism, and reduced time management. My research shows that employees who demonstrate neglect behaviours underestimate the importance of their role and responsibilities, not just during periods of change, but generally. And this negative outlook is brought about by stress and lack of support during periods of change. However, the positive of neglect behaviour is that it can be analysed in order to change management initiatives, in order for change management initiatives to implement the appropriate support. Next slide, please. In comparison, loyalty behaviour is a wholly positive behavioural pattern. Essentially, it's characterised by employees soldiering on through the disruptive change period with the mindset that the change process will bring about positive outcomes across the organisation. Employees who demonstrate loyalty behaviour are also show promising leadership qualities by offering support to their peers, being flexible in their approaches, and coming up with creative solutions to any problems that may arise. Next slide, please. During periods of change, the disruption, stress, and uncertainty leads to a wide range of reactions which can either break down or reinforce the shared identity of the workforce. My research found that organizations with weak or rigid social identities prior to periods of change experience negative reactions to a far greater extent than those that were adaptable, creative, and innovative, traits which facilitate quick responses to and preparation for handling reactions towards change. Next slide, please. So far, we've looked at how employees and wider organizations react to change and the cognitive and behavioral processes that influence those reactions. However, these objective observations fail to factor in the wider impact of organizational change on humans outside of the workplace. In the same way that organizational change impacts our perspectives and approaches to work, it can also impact our lives outside of work. This leads to consequences for mental and physical health. Next slide, please. However, there are some limitations to studying these consequences. There is limited public data available to inform systematic quantitative studies of the link between organizational changes and the employee mental health and associated outcomes such as stress. The health of individuals is often studied using qualitative methods such as surveys and interviews. These methods can be difficult to structure because questions related to mental health are very sensitive. Interviewees could avoid directly answering the questions to hide a possible condition, making it difficult to collate accurate data. Additionally, some individuals might self-medicate, typically with alcohol, over-the-counter painkillers, or recreational drugs. As a result, current research is likely to underestimate the extent and effect of increased stress caused by organizational change. This is because psychological and medical studies are more likely to rely on data involving the most severe cases, where increased stress leads to prescription drug use. Next slide, please. Some employee stress was found to be a positive driver for productivity and alertness in the workplace. However, excessive stress activates the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. This gives way to further health consequences such as depression, insomnia, anxiety, and in the longer term, life-threatening conditions linked to blood pressure. Organizational changes entailing actual or expected layoffs were found to significantly impact commitment for both the employees affected and those that remain. This remains true in case of emotional survivor guilt, self-esteem, sick leave, and absenteeism. Change management initiatives can help to reduce or prevent these negative reactions and health outcomes for employees. We're going to cover what makes for an effective change management initiative in the next section. Next slide, please. There we go. My research found that many current programs fail to achieve their goal of implementing comprehensive, successful change within the organizations they are employed by to help. Moreover, current models often focus too much on helping the organization in implementing change while neglecting the perspectives and reactions of the individuals who are most likely to be affected by proposed changes. Next slide, please. When change is managed poorly, the effects can be damaging at both individual and organizational levels. Common pitfalls include poor communication, ineffective leadership, manipulative or exclusionary practices, and neglecting the emotional impact of new technologies. One example of ineffective change management comes from the Hawthorne studies. The 4 studies showed how increased supervision temporarily increased productivity. However, increased supervision also created suspicion and later reduced productivity when the employees under observation believed it would lead to layoffs or reductions in pay. Ultimately, ineffective strategies increase resistance, stress, and employee turnover. Next slide, please. On the other hand, effective change management fosters communication, collaboration, and inclusion. When leaders listen as well as direct, when employees are involved in shaping the process, and when emotional responses are taken seriously, change can actually strengthen relationships and improve performance. Importantly, successful strategies adapt to the diversity of employees' attitudes and experiences rather than applying a one-size-fits-all approach. Next slide, please. So to conclude, Organizational change is not just about structures and processes, it's about people. Employees' micro level reactions and organizations' macro level reactions both matter. Poorly managed change can damage trust and morale, while effective person-centered approaches can transform change into a positive, collaborative experience. My research suggests that the most successful initiatives are those that recognize the emotional dimension of change. They place people at the heart of the process using strategies that help to reduce stress and prevent negative mental health consequences, like Paula's. So yeah, next slide, please.
Well, I just want to add, if that's possible, Natalie. I mean, that
Yeah,
was brilliant, really insightful. And
you're welcome.
it's a lot of the reasons why I've actually seen successful change where people have been brought on that journey along. And I think to summarize that, what I think is really, really important is, understanding emotional and psychological dimensions of organisational change, as you've covered,
Mm,
and reinforcing that emotional reactions are normal and they are
yes.
manageable. So don't run away from them. Deal with it, help the people, and support them through it, because fear can be demoralising. And it can cause, like I said earlier, a paralysis. And I think the
Mm,
emphasis on collaboration as a foundation is for shared learning.
yeah.
And just lastly, I think really is collaboration. It reduces silos and it builds trust. And successful change relies on strong relationships. So thank you for that, Natalie. I really, really appreciate the research and the work that you've done to produce this, which is fantastic. I hope you've all enjoyed listening and can take something away. And we really would like you to complete the survey, and we will cover all the answers and guidance in the next webinar. And until then, thank you very much. And thank you again, Natalie.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us.